guys. Maternity leave from high school. It's an idea State Representative Rick Mietta says might get an airing in the next legislative session. The groups Young Women United and the ACLU favor this idea. Another quick disclosure, I do sit on the board of the ACLU but was not involved with that decision. Now, Sophie, the argument against this idea is this way. The ACLU and others want to have up to 10 days of maternity leave for high schoolers who give birth, plus another 14 days on top of that per semester.
Right.
Because things happen. You have to take the kid to the hospital, all the things that we know about as parents, but it's difficult when you're in school. The argument again is this would promote teenage pregnancy and diminish the impact of getting an education.
I am absolutely going to go get knocked up in order to get 24 whole days off from school. I cannot wait. Like, please. Please, that is an insane notion that you would go through 9 months of pregnancy, that you would raise a child to the age of 18, God willing, in exchange for 24 days in your first semester and 14 days a semester after that. Listen, the impact of education on young women's lives is so important. It's so intense. We need to do what we can to make sure that young women and young men, young fathers, don't get in trouble with school, are able to continue their education. The education is so important, especially for young people who are going to have to be raising children.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Sorry for shouting.
No, absolutely. You're free to shout. Absolutely. You know, it's interesting when you think about this, Tom, how it breaks your heart a little bit. I mean, 10 days. In any study you see about new motherhood, new parenthood, 10 days is not enough time to bond with a child. So we're already asking for a sacrifice, it seems to me, of just 10 days off. But does this in fact promote something else? Is there some other inadvertent thing, unthought of thing that could happen here that we're laughing about that could potentially be problematic for these students?
Well, you know, I think it's problematic for our society as a whole. Okay. You know, the current system, you know, the way things are now, it just, you know, it isn't working. It isn't meeting the needs for those students as far as that find themselves in that situation. APS has done a great job, Albuquerque Public Schools, of creating a very of a nationally you know, recognized program with New Futures. I think that's a great blueprint to follow. But then, you know, you take into the account, you know, what is the family unit? What is the family structure? And I think that's really what the opponents to Representative Mietta's proposed legislation are really, you know, kind of trying to say is, what about the family unit?
Right.
They're just going about it in the wrong way.
Exactly. You know, Jamie, my ex-wife actually used to teach at Freedom High when we first moved here. It's a very interesting place. And New Futures, my fault, Freedom High. New Futures. I absolutely agree that there is something here that's a model, but there has to be a little give and take here. We can punish these kids for doing something that's out of the society wheel of when these things should happen, or we can get real about it. Say, look, we're number 2 in the nation on this. Are we just going to cast aside these young women? So where's the middle here is where I'm getting at. Does this amount of time give you heartburn personally, that amount of time off?
I don't think it's the amount of time, I think it's the mandate.
Okay.
And I think that's codified in law. I think that, you know, school districts like Albuquerque's made a decision that they'll, you know, in certain schools, or one school in particular, they have a policy to try to help these young girls get through this horrible stage of their lives. Okay, and it's, you know, in ways in which they can ease through this and stay in school and then become, you know, fully productive, right, and balance these things out. But we're also talking about, you know, probably young girls that don't have that structure at home either. Right?
That's right.
I mean, some are more fortunate than others, and it's just going to be a cycle. So it depends what you do with the time. You know, I'm not sure it's a bonding period so much, because I think in many cases that it's a period of time during the day that you're going to be in school, right? Versus, you know, a full-time job as it is for women. But I don't know. I think that we have to think about what kind of things we can do, either public-private partnerships or something that come in from charities or churches, whatnot, to help these kids become parents. Right. Because that's how we're going to break the cycle ultimately, is if people understand that you know, by bringing a child into this world, you can actually do some good by creating a family unit, right? And nurturing that child versus neglecting that child, which is, I think, what we see more and creates a lot of the social ills that we see in New Mexico.
Sure, absolutely. Harry, you know, the idea of the 14 days per semester and all that, Mr. Mietta's proposal includes the fact that, no, these are not just days gone. You make up the time. Absolutely. You make up the work. You make up all that. So what's the problem? If it's made up, what is the problem here? But think about this as well while you think about that. What if the work is not made up? Have we not just taken the long way around the barn to the same result? That we get a young woman who's not going to be able to fully flower through society because society is deemed that she's out of step and all that kind of thing. So are you concerned about the makeup work starting there? Can that be done?
If we start with the makeup work, it's really got to be a solution in which the girls have not only the time to do the makeup work, but really the support. Look, nobody wants a situation in which a girl in high school gets pregnant, and we haven't really talked all that much about the fathers as well too, and that's one of the things that really seems to be missing from this initiative.
Okay.
So the time, as has been said before, really does have to be well spent. I think the opposition to this comes out of this desire almost to shame people. It's almost the sense that if we just put signs that say unclean around the teenage mothers' necks and have them ring a bell, that somehow that's going to dissuade other teenagers from getting pregnant. But if you have a teenager, or you know a teenager, or you were a teenager, you know that they don't think all that strategically. And this is actually one of the other big issues, is that, as has been alluded to before, we really lag behind in terms of comprehensive sex education. So you look at New Hampshire, which has the lowest rate of teenage pregnancy, and it has a very comprehensive and thought-through policy that includes abstinence, but also includes birth control. And a big part of that has to be to get people, and particularly teenage girls and their boyfriends, to think strategically about their future, because that's not one of the things that they're thinking about. So I would agree with Sophie. Nobody is saying, well, I'll get some extra time off, and so I'm going to go have a kid.
Right, exactly right. Let me stay with you as a teacher. I want to finish up here less than a minute. On this idea of making up work, qualitatively, is it the same thing when a kid is out of the classroom for those moments that you're teaching that day in the flow versus circling around way later, perhaps doing it online? Is there a quality loss here? Should we be talking about that?
There is an enormous quality loss, and that's got to be a part of the solution as well. It's not just about the work itself, it's about the educational experience. It's about the interaction with your classmates and your teachers. So if we look at it just as a matter of doing the work and handing it in, we're really missing the boat in terms of what an education actually is, and it's the ongoing day-to-day interaction between pupil and student and among students. And there's no easy way to replicate that, and so that should be a part of the equation as well too. How do we recreate to the best of our ability a situation in which these teenage mothers, and again, to hasten to add, fathers, have a real educational experience that will then equip them to raise their kids and have a good role in society.
Well done. I like that. Now, we're on the clock now, moving right there with a single minute as a group to hit the high points of other news this week. First up, new life for filibuster reform. It's an idea championed by Senator Tom Udall. He's been on this for a while. Then Harry Reid, he's there too. And now the White House has voiced support for inaction, Jamie. A good thing of what goes around comes around for Democrats. Everyone does this. I can remember this back to Reagan. Everybody has to have some filibuster reform after every election cycle. Is this going anywhere?
Well, it may go somewhere, and if it does, it's be unfortunate. But there should be some common sense reforms about, hey, some positions that require Senate confirmation, let's take those off the table. Because as a former appointee who didn't have a boss for a while, that's a problem. So we got to fix that part. But I'll tell you what's going to happen. If the Senate passes this, that legislation that they pass through these measures is going to be dead on arrival in a Republican-controlled House. That's where the next bottleneck's going to be.
Sure. What do you think, Tom, on this one?
Well, I'm glad to see that Senator Udall, came up and helped to push this idea forward. I agree with Jamie that, hey, you might set the rules now, but when the tables are turned, is it really something you're going to favor?
That's right.
Let's just kind of leave the way the rules are for now.
Right. I'm going to hold you guys there. Good stuff there. New Mexico's two largest universities, New Mexico State and UNM, landed on an ignominiously difficult list this week. It's not even a word, it's made it up. The most dangerous schools. Both went to work crying foul, saying the statistics used to compile the list were both incomplete and in some cases plain wrong. Tom, is potential for a nightmare averted from a PR guy's standpoint? Is it enough to knock down the study, or do things linger here?
Well, you know, the untold story with this survey is that this is the time of year when a lot of students are making their decisions about where they're going to go to school. Students really don't impact one way or another. They think they can just find their own way through. But for the parents that are involved in their kids' education, this is really huge. Challenge was for both universities. They were blindsided by it. UNM really didn't have a chance to fully respond for about 5 to 6 days afterwards. By that point, it is viral. Absolutely.
Oh my God, Sophie, your thoughts on that?
You know, it's a tough thing. I really do understand the message from UNM about how if you have higher reporting rates, and I know UNM has made a real effort to encourage students to report when something happens, higher reporting rates are going to look worse. At the same time, I will say every time the stats come out from the UNM Police Department, I sort of cringe. I know. I personally feel safe on campus. I have never had a problem. I do too. But I do know people who have. It's a real, it's a challenge.
Yeah, 10 seconds, Harry. What are your thoughts there? You're there every day.
Yeah, I'm there every day, and I have a similar experience too. Sophie, I think we're way too hung up on rankings. So Business Insider did an additional cut of the data looking at Clery Act stats, indicating that I think New Mexico State was 9th, and we weren't even on the list at UNM.
There you go.
But in some sense, that's beside the point.
That's right.
The ranking
cut you
doesn't
there,
really matter.
unfortunately. That's exactly right. Now, new topic. Among the myriad narratives growing from November's elections is one that's unexpected. Here, the state Senate will have just 6 female senators next year. That's down from 11 in 13 at the beginning of the last decade. Harry, let me start with you on this one, too. New Mexico fares better relative to other states when you consider women in the legislature. Still, there's something to be concerned about here. That's a big drop as a percentage.
That is a big drop. And so even if we look at both parts of the roundhouse, we're 18th nationally, but the fact that there was such a drop in the Senate, but then also in terms of the leadership structure within the roundhouse, that has to be the fundamental concern, and there's no easy way to solve that.
That's a great point. Your thought on that one, Jamie?
Well, it seems like a lot of women are rising to the occasion to put their names in the hat for leadership. I see that on the Democrat side in particular. But you know, it is part of the function of the parties and their candidate recruitment efforts, and I think that needs to be included.
It's complicated.
For both sides.
You're right. It's complicated. But Jamie just made a good point. The amount of women that ran but didn't necessarily make it. Maybe that's the truer number. There was a lot of female candidates out there.
I think that there has been a real success on the Democratic side with Emerge New Mexico, which is a nonprofit that recruits women to run for office in New Mexico, trains them, helps them run. And I think that Emerge, I think they had 11 candidates this go round. I'd like to see more of their candidates winning in the future, but they actually had a really good track record.
Absolutely. Yeah, a few more seconds for Tom.
Yeah, Emerge is, I think, is a model for other political parties to mirror. I mean, they were very successful. Rena Sapansky is doing a great job over there, very effective work, and it should, you know, put the fear of God into a lot of Republicans.
Absolutely.
Could this be just, guys, that it's just one of those dips because there's an inevitable rise here? It's coming, more female representation. It's just coming. New one, students carrying rosaries at Atrisco Heritage Academy. That is an APS school. We're told to keep their religious articles close to them, but out of sight, after administrators worried that rosaries had been co-opted by gangs as a way to identify membership. Sophie, I mean, constitutionally, there's some interesting things coming here. We can't litigate this ahead of time, certainly. But APS, you know, they have the right to do this with hats, pants, jackets. Why not other symbols? Why not a rosary?
I actually found it not so troubling, the fact that students weren't being told you cannot wear the rosary. Just be, in my mind, it was like, be sensible. You don't want to be flashing what might be a gang sign.
So this was
in the
your
classroom.
interest to be.
I think it is in your interest if you are not participating in this. What will kids think of next?
Right, exactly. Tom, your thought?
Secondary education is very tricky, very difficult, and it's not the same when we were all going in through high school, mid school. So, you know, they have to do what they have to do, and you know, I think in this particular case, they made the right decision.
Sure.
You know, gangs will, you know, leverage the symbols that they want to leverage, and you know, there will be a point in time where it will be safe to wear a rosary.
Yeah, we're at 30. Your
You got to
thoughts?
fight that back, though, because I'm really concerned about the constitutional limits, you know, impact on these kids, especially those that are truly religious. This sounds like something that France would do, in which France, I think, did do this stuff to basically
Sure.
burqas and
Head covering, sure.
against the Muslim population. That was
Interesting analogy. That's
why we're different.
Yeah.
Why the United States is a unique.
That's
country.
right.
Right, and
15 seconds,
the
Eric.
question in the beginning is why rosaries, why hats, not rosaries? Religion is named in the First Amendment, and hats aren't. And so, when it's a religious issue, there really does have to be a much greater degree of sensitivity. My first thought is, what will kids think of next? But you really do have to tread a very, very fine line, given that you have to respect people's religious sensibilities.
Sure. And I would say on your side of it, since they're not making a ban, you're avoiding a suit. You know what I mean?
You hope. I mean,
you hope, right?
anyone can sue
Exactly.
anyone for anything, right?
Yeah. Right.
But you hope that is seen as a sensible solution.
Absolutely. Now, Governor Susana Martinez is standing behind her support for a New Mexico law that collects DNA samples from those arrested for, not convicted of, but for felonies. A similar measure is before the U.S. Supreme Court, Jamie. And anything at stake here for Governor politically, because I can think of other law enforcement, law and order things she's been very active on that she gets a lot of support. When she throws her voice behind something, if it's law and order, it seems to get across the finish line. Same thing here?
Yeah, she's been a government lawyer her whole life, and so I think that this matters, for her, and that's great. It was one of her signature accomplishments when she was a district attorney, and I think she has the knowledge about it to want to contribute to the national debate on this issue.
Sure. Tom, is the science far enough along on DNA to give you comfort on that too?
It appears the courts would say yes. Yeah. I think this is a great opportunity for her to, really kind of drive an issue that's very close and personal to her. An issue, as Jamie mentioned, that she drove, right through both the House and Senate to the governor's signature.
Same for you, Sophie? Is this something politically for her that burnishes her image now?
She may feel that it does now, but I think that it is fascinating that the same political group that says, hands off my everything, is willing to have DNA collected from people who have not, in fact, been convicted. That seems like a very strange turnaround to me, unless you, recognize that this is a law and order, bell-ringing type exercise.
Sure. We're out of time. Harry, thank you so much for coming and bringing your wonderful students. We love you guys. Good to come back and see us, okay? We're back next week with a look at Native American student success in high schools across New Mexico. It's part of our American Graduate Series. Thanks for joining us. I'm Gene Grant. We'll see you next week in Focus.